Welcome to Change Bites with Rafaa Mustafa. Each episode features practical tips and actionable approaches to change management, grounded in real cases and delivered in small bites. A key takeaway snapshot is shared on the host's LinkedIn profile, so there's no need to take notes while listening. Let's begin today's episode.
Welcome back to Change Bites, Kieran. In part 1, we talked about mindset and capability. Now we want to get very practical. This part is all about the real applications of AI that change managers can use straight away. Let's start with something that comes up in most change projects, and that's training content. What's your go-to approach for using AI to create fast, quality training content? And what tools do you like?
Yeah, sure. So I think when it comes to learning and development tools, all the big players of 5 years ago are still the big players today. Articulate, Captivates, Synthesia, Camtasia, they're all silly, but they've all got AI in them now. Now, I think in the first sort of 12 months after ChatGPT dropped, it was very surface level AI. I think that's changed a fair amount. Like if you're trying to create videos, video content or image content, or trying to create the copy, it's built into the tools. So I think when it comes to creating learning content, continuing to use those tools still remains, I think, that the right way to do it. However, maybe a step back from that is thinking about a more end-to-end process from the need of the learning that's been identified in your change plan, or maybe it's just someone that said we need a learning module for this. However it's come about, from that inception through to delivery, that's a whole end-to-end process that's got lots of different tasks which you can use AI to accelerate different parts of it. And a lot of it might just be, how do I think about breaking it down into different modules? How do I think about different narratives that can best illustrate the learning concepts, or what's the different activities? Like doing that planning stage all the way through to how do I assess, and what are the different measures which I should be reporting on, and what does my report look like? I think all those different things you can use like a classic chat-based tool like a ChatGPT to do it. And then jump across to your authoring tool and using the different pieces in there. So, I mean, we mentioned in the first part all about 4 sessions per day. You'd hit that so quickly, I think, just using different tools like that. But the key thing I'd say is you're guiding the process rather than getting the tool to execute the end-to-end process. You've got to guide it, because if you can use AI at all those different steps and you don't apply your mind and sort of critically check at each step, you can end up with that AI slop e-learning module very easily. And I am starting to see those things come out. You know, it'll be a video that comes out like, wow, that's really vanilla and weird. There's something eerily wrong about it. And really you can break it down because, well, the script was written by AI and didn't receive a proper review. The voiceover was created, it was a bit clunky and then didn't get the right review. And then slowly but surely you go through the end-to-end process, everything comes together, and it's just like, oh, it's just clunky. Now that is something I wanted to touch on. Let's get practical. How do you actually review at each step? Like, what should you be looking for? Because if you're thorough in your review, it's a fair question to say, well, why don't I just do it myself anyway? Like if I'm going to get AI to write the script for this learning module, and then I have to review the entire thing, isn't that just as much time to do it? Well, first of all, I'd say no. I think that's a bit ridiculous. But what should you be looking for? Is it accurate? Like are the facts that it's stating, can you sort of attribute it back to some sort of source? Is it, are the citations correct? Are the numbers, the facts and everything, is it factually accurate? The second thing is, has it actually done what you wanted it to do? Like you should be thinking about what are your constraints, your requirements, what's the actual task? I want you to create a learning module script. Well, has it done that in the format that you need it? Has it done it with the length that you need it, in the language and following the rules? The third thing would be, is it fit for purpose? And that often, I think, refers to, has it hit the right tone? Has it hit the right audience and so forth? So like that'd be my piece there around, if you're doing the learning management piece, use what's built into the tools. Also use a more general tool for the larger process, but you've got to apply that human-led review and critical thinking at each step. And that's a framework you can use to do it.
There's so many tools out there. And like you said, Kieran, it's about picking the tool that fits the job and still thinking critically about how we use it. All right, let's move to SharePoint. SharePoint pages can be time-consuming, so this will be great for listeners. If I'm using SharePoint as the main hub for a change project, for comms, training, updates, and support, what help can AI give me to build and maintain that more effectively?
I really don't have a good answer for this one. I'll be honest with you. There is a lot of sort of Copilot Studio and AI things built into the Microsoft suite. So there is a capability there to get AI to complete actions against it. But look, maybe you disagree with me here, but I think creating a SharePoint site, the planning stage and the structuring and pulling together the content is the most time-consuming part. But I think the funny thing about SharePoint is that doesn't mean that building the site is easy. Like, you might have all of your words, all of your images. It still takes a lot of time. So look, I'll just flag the fact that the actual building side, maybe there's some wonderful stuff there built into Copilot, but unfortunately, I just don't know about it. But I do have a bit of a killer idea in terms of just pulling together the structure of things. One of the things that OpenAI brought out I think it was over a year ago now, was their deep research. And there's a lot of different versions of deep research now too. Google have got their own one. There's a couple of other ones out there. But what it means is you set it a research task, you give it files that it can look at, and then it will go off and, using an agentic workflow of its own design. So an agent will look at the task, look at the files, do all and then it'll spin up what are called sub-agents, which will then say, work on different sections, and then they might have their own sub-agents. Within a small period of time, it can spin up an entire workforce that can work on this research question, accessing the internet, the files that you provide and everything, to then pull together and then answer that research question. What we found, though, and what the public found pretty quickly, is you don't just have to give it research tasks. You can give it a task to build any kind of document. So if you're in a situation where you need to create a SharePoint site, well, that's a single asset. And so with a defined structure, you've got pages that sit there. There has to be the whole structure, right? So that in itself is your defined output. And what has to be rooted in, because we can't have it just going off and basing it off internet or hallucinations of this and that. Well, that would be your sort of knowledge base of files that you've got. And so what people found was they were able to put all those files in, tell it that instead of doing a research article, I want you to actually create a SharePoint site, give me the structure, the page content, but base all your content purely on all these files that I've provided you. It might be let's say it's a technology change. It might be architecture documents. It might be different bits of comms, like your entire library of comms that have been prepared up to this date, all your different meeting minutes that you've had with the steercos and the working groups, because all the information's in there. It's just the hard work of trying to find all that stuff and pull it together. So getting it to do that. So there are, like I mentioned, there's lots of different tech out there that can do that. Google and OpenAI are the two ones. I mean, Anthropic might have one as well, which I'm not too familiar with. And there's a lot of in-house stuff which I'm aware of from different groups as well. But setting agents to the task, and a simple way to do that would be using some sort of deep research or research assistant is a good way to do it. But again, once you've got it, and then how do you put that into SharePoint? I don't know. I'm not too sure about the easiest way.
I like that approach. Setting AI up as a research assistant and giving it a clear task feels like a really practical way to start. At the moment, SharePoint is an area I'm exploring quite heavily, so I'll be sharing what works and what doesn't. And that's a great segue into the next area I want to explore, which is tools that can really scale our work, like custom GPTs and agents. A lot of people are curious about these, but don't know where to begin. What are some smart, practical ways change managers can use custom GPTs or agents in their day-to-day work?
Yeah, custom GPTs are probably a good place to start. And I think it's OpenAI's funny way of saying, the technology you hear them called assistants and other things, they're just straight up called agents. But think about it in terms of it's already got some predefined rules, instructions that you give it so that you're not having to repeat yourself every time. So so keep that in mind, and you might go, oh, that's kind of like this other tool here or that tool there. So that's something which I would just, with a lowercase, describe as an assistant. Whereas an agent is something that you give it a goal, not an instruction. And then it will look at the goal and then come up with the instructions that it needs to perform it, and then do the actions to perform it. And it will go off and access whatever it's got access to. Now, agents, there's very few enterprises which have got agents available for people to build and use. So I think it's not that practical for us to spend a lot of time looking at that. If you do have access to some great agentic stuff, fantastic, lucky you. I don't think there's a lot out there that do. I think a lot of the case that agents are being put to complete more end-to-end processes, and humans don't really see them too much. It's mostly the engineers that are seeing them, because it's risky as well. Like if you give an open-ended goal to an agent, what can it do? What will it not do? All that, yeah, that's a bit risky. But assistance, far lower risk. It just means that when you're talking to it, it already knows the stuff that you want it to know. So I think it's important to think about it in terms of fixed variables versus, what's the other thing? Variable. Yeah, your constants and your ones that change. Well, I guess a variable by definition. So if you're doing a project and this project requires a lot of different comms, and it's always about the same project, so the context is the same, the dates are the same, the tone might be the same because it's all coming from the same team, but you've got lots of different audience that requires lots of different comms. Well, that might be a good idea to then create an assistant that has all that information in place. So every time you're prompting, all you're having to do is say, hey, okay, now we need to have a letter. Here's the key message. Here's the audience. And it will already pull all the information required and then put it in there. So I think that the practical uses of assistance is really, it's really high, especially when you've got a team of change managers. Like if you each need to, if you're working on a project and you need to keep things consistent, it applies that consistency because you've got that set of rules, that pre-instruction that's already loaded up into it. So again, comms, I know I've mentioned it before, is a great example, but I do think it's a really important one. Can also be good for FAQs, although I'm not a big fan of FAQs, but every project seems to need one, a set of them. So there might be a certain set of guidelines that you need to have, and you can use that. Again, in some enterprise environments, you can even use that assistant and make it available to your general users to be able to ask questions. So that can negate the whole need for FAQs, but there's not a lot of enterprises that allow that. Things are very tight-knit. So if you're sitting there going, hey, why isn't my employer allowing me to put this AI bot, chat bot available to people? This is insane. Well, it's not uncommon, and it's there's a reason why it's, I think, a high risk thing for teams to do, for businesses to do. But assistance that we can use ourselves, just think about it. If you've got set variables, but then things that you can change yourself, then that means that it can be a good tool to for repeated tasks.
I've played around with custom GPTs myself and had some really positive results. But that's probably a story for another day, Kieran. We could easily do a whole episode just on that. Now, let's shift into user experience. In what ways can AI enhance the user experience during change? And how can AI support accessibility in content and training?
Yeah, sure. So I think in terms of accessibility, getting it to perform reviews, and if you instruct it to be a critical reviewer, even if it's visual things, then providing with feedback, it's quite good at that. And I think it's something which I constantly strive to get my head around what I should be thinking about in terms of accessibility. But inevitably, asking it to do a review of some of my work, it comes back and it makes some suggestions to improve its accessibility. So I think it's very good from that front. In terms of user experience, I'm going to give you a tip, but I don't think AI should be replacing people's input. Let me just put that out there straight up front. Focus groups. What if you had your personas and then just fed those personas in for the AI to take on that as a role? And I think from a user experience perspective, it can be really useful to have an actual focus group conversation, but then before you actually go to anyone. So I think that's really useful in terms of, hey, do you think this would be useful? Then you can get some feedback and you can fine tune in your instructions to say, this one, I want you to be highly critical and come back with things that you think might annoy you, or you can create that in your personas, get it to take on the persona and have that conversation. So I think it's, I think it has a lot of applicability for that. But like I said before, that doesn't mean you don't do a focus group. I think good user experience means that you need to speak to people, understand what their needs and their constraints are and what their requirements are, which, that remains important.
That's a good balance. From my experience, AI is great for shaping questions, but 100%, the real insight still comes from talking to people. I completely agree. And of course, none of this works if we don't keep it safe and trusted. So let's touch on the guardrails needed as we scale AI in change work. What practical validation checks or ethical guardrails should we put in place as we start using AI more?
So I do think that these are two different things which are both really important: responsible use today and ethical use. And let's touch on the responsible bit first, because I think we've already covered a bit of this, which is if you're being responsible, you need to say when things are AI. I think that everyone agrees that there should be an obligation that if you used AI to assist or to purely generate something, the reader, the audience, they need to understand that that's the case. What also needs to happen is there needs to be an unassisted review that occurs before things go out. And by unassisted, I mean, you don't just feed it back into AI and say, hey, fact check this. Like that's not really good enough. You should be thinking about this in terms of what if you delegated this to a new joiner in the team to complete the task. You've received this, and now you're going to go and send it off with your name on it. So if you did that, which is a normal thing to do, I think if people would say, yeah, sure, that ethically, that's fine. That's why you have team members, so that someone can do something, you can pass on. Well, maybe it's not ethically sound to say that you did it, but putting that aside, you'd still want to check three things. Is it factually correct? And again, these are the same three things I mentioned before. Is it correct? Is it logical and rational? So do things flow? Is it, and does it fit your particular scenario? So has it done what you want it to do completely, or has it only partially done it, or has it left things out, or has it gone more or made a judgment call that's in the wrong direction? So I think that's the first thing in terms of responsible use. And there are a lot of different elements to responsible use as well, but I do think that's one of the most important things, is just having applied that review, and having this skill of reviewing effectively. As change managers or as just workers in general, we will get quicker at reviewing, like we'll get better at it. But at the first, we just need to do a good job of it. And so keeping in mind those three things: is it accurate? Is it sort of logical, rational? Is it the best fit for this scenario? In terms of the ethical thing, I think this is a larger conversation to be had. And the larger conversation really is about, it's not so much how do I best use it, it's a question of should I be using it? And that's a question which earlier in our conversation, I think throughout this conversation, I've been really encouraging that we should be using use cases and thinking about how do we use it more and more and more. At the same time, I think it's important that we think about it in terms of completing tasks, not end-to-end processes and leaving our minds out of it, because it can lead to something which is probably, it's bad. AI slop's not good, but there are worse things that we can lead to. And one of the things which I think is a real possibility is if we're just getting AI to do absolutely everything, then it's a question of, well, where do humans fit into the whole mix? And so I think it's a fair question for us to ask, should we be using AI to just completely take over this thing? Where do humans fit in? Where should we be focusing our skills? Now, these are questions I don't have answers to. It's just what keeps me up at night. And look, from day to day, I'll switch from being really concerned that we're heading to a global economic collapse when there'll be not enough work for people to do because it'll all be handled by AI. And then the next day I'll see the failed attempts of AI to try and do things, and then it's far, far worse than what we ever thought it was. And it's like, oh, actually, we should be all right. So, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. But
I think many of us swing between those two feelings.
Exactly. I do think that's the realm of the ethics. So it's just that question of should we be using it? And I think as change managers, we should just be using it now day to day just to be more effective, to be able to accelerate the pace in which we're doing things. Because I think if our stakeholders would certainly appreciate it. And look, every change manager I've ever met would love to work quicker and then get on to the next project, get that buzz of, hey, we've wrapped up the project. Let's celebrate that that's been done. Let's move on to another one. I think that kind of, if AI can do that, help us to do a great job and then work through more complex work and a more variety of work in a set period of time, that sounds like a good deal. So I think, ethically the answer should probably be, yes, let's use AI more often than not for a change manager.
Fantastic. Let's finish with one final question. If a listener wanted to take one meaningful step tomorrow to lift the impact of AI in their change practice, what would you recommend?
One thing, I wrote down a completely different thing, but I just think, just ask AI. I think it would be the first thing. Like, ask AI that exact question. Say, hey, what should I be doing to better use AI practically? Don't sell me any sort of harebrained ideas, and you'll probably get some really good things. But look, to be a bit more practical than that, I think the one thing is to really practice and practice and practice. Use it for different things. Try to improve. Stick with it. If you didn't get the answer, just rewrite the prompt and try it again. Try it again, practice, and really be critical about that thinking. Because when you're doing that, there's a very practical reason why you will get better. These models behave in a certain way. They behave in a way where they're very confident, they're very sycophantic, they love you, they want you to be very happy, and they can hallucinate. I should mention hallucination is in a massive decline, but still, it's something that can happen. And so there are these behaviors that the tool has. And like, if you were using a screwdriver, you would want to know that the way that it works, its behavior is that it goes at the end of the screw, you rotate it clockwise and it's going to screw in anti-clockwise, like simple things. Well, this is a more complex tool, but it's got behaviors. It's got a set of ways in which it interacts. And I think if we practice and practice, we'll get to learn how it interacts and get it to do what we want to do more accurately and faster and better and so forth. So yeah, that would be my tip, is just practice. And again, it's not because it's a thing I've plucked out of the air. It's because you need to know how this tool works, and it's very bad at telling you how it works, and everybody else seems to be pretty bad at telling you how it works because it's complex. But just practice it, and you'll learn. You'll figure it out.
That's a solid way to wrap up. Practice, try things out, and keep learning as you go. Kieran, thank you. This has been a rich and practical conversation. I know our listeners will walk away with ideas they can put into practice straight away.
Great. Thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate the invitation and chance to have a chat.
Thank you for listening to Change Bites. A key takeaway snapshot from this episode is available on the host's LinkedIn profile. Links to all resources mentioned are included in the podcast notes. Podcast updates are also shared via the Agile-Brainz LinkedIn page. Follow Change Bites to stay up to date with future episodes.